Holy City Center Radio is episode 384, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, June 20th, 2025. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. We've got lots to get to, but first, if you need plans this weekend or beyond, go to holycitycenter.com/calendar, where you can find out what is going on all around the Charleston area. This is always a pretty somber week or few days each year when we come around to June and these horrible anniversaries that are on back-to-back days. Of course, the Emanuel 9 10-year anniversary, actually, of that horrific mass shooting that was carried out by a self-avowed white supremacist at the Mother Emanuel AME Church in downtown Charleston. That anniversary is on the 17th. And like I said, today was a 10-year anniversary. I can't believe it's been a decade, but at the same time, when I think back, it's like, yeah, it really has. Obviously, but it's been 10 years. Like, yeah, there has been a lot that has happened since then in terms of, everything in the world and whatnot. But certainly those 9 souls have not been forgotten by this community. And it's always so bizarre to think back to that time. It's all kind of a haze of events and rallies and, of course, funerals and memorials and people, marching the bridge and people marching downtown or, randomly would congregate in front of the church for impromptu, just, I don't know what you would call it. There would be just impromptu gatherings and people would sing and, people would talk and just try to make sense of something that you can't make sense of. So, I don't want to, we have a lot to get to today. You all either remember if you were here or maybe, remember it from wherever you were at the time, seeing it in the news. You're aware of everything that happened that day. And unfortunately, what little has been done since then in the way of, gun violence prevention, not just here, but on the national level. We still have the Charleston loophole. You can look that up if you're unfamiliar. And we still have no hate crime legislation here in South Carolina. So as much as things have changed, sadly, as it directly relates to this tragedy, not much has. The other tragedy is just the day after. So the 18th, of course, is the anniversary of the Charleston 9. Those are 9 Charleston firefighters who died in just a horrible tragedy at what was called the Sofa Superstore. It was in West Ashley and off of Sam Rittenberg Boulevard. And, obviously a different tragedy, but one nonetheless. And that one took place back in 2007. So, certainly not as fresh in everyone's mind. It's been nearly 20 years since that tragedy happened. But certainly, one that those of us who have lived here for any certain amount of time, especially those who were here in Charleston, I actually moved to Charleston just a couple of weeks after the fire had happened. So obviously I was paying attention to Charleston news of this place I was about to move to. And so it very much sticks with me as well. So obviously my thoughts and prayers these last few days have been, with the people that we lost and the family and friends, community, and everyone else who was lost during those 2 tragedies. Other than that, not too much going on here. Obviously, a lot of work as usual. Thankfully, I've got some good things coming up this weekend to kind of shift gears from that mindset over the last few days. I'm going to see the Dave Matthews Band at Credit One Stadium on Friday and Saturday, my favorite band, which I talk about all the time. And so I'm very much looking forward to that. But that's it as far as personal stuff and things that have, been going on here in the city as far as, remembrances and things. But there's plenty of news that's been happening. I've got lots of updates, so let's get into it. After lots of speculation, it seems we are just a few days away from the first official announcement of who is running for governor of South Carolina. As expected, Alan Wilson will be one of those people. The 4-term Republican Attorney General of this state is set to enter the open gubernatorial race. It's such a hard word to say. In 2026. The reason it's open is because Henry McMaster has exhausted, his term. He's no longer eligible to run again. So we'll have a new governor, whoever that may be. Although it's not official, someone who is familiar with his campaign but wasn't authorized to speak about details. They told the AP, the Associated Press, that Wilson will make the announcement on Monday. So even when he officially announces he's running on Monday, it's still not official because the 2026 elections, to file for those elections, it doesn't even open till March. So even if he says he does, there's always a possibility he backs out before March, but that's certainly not expected. Nancy Mace is another person who's expected to eventually announce a run. The current lieutenant governor is also, that's Pamela Evett. She's expected to make that announcement as well. We'll see who else throws their hat in the ring. There's been some other speculation and people talking about, exploratory committees and things. So we'll see. I'll certainly keep you posted. But that Alan Wilson is the first one who seems to be set to make the announcement. I think I quickly mentioned this on Monday's show. There's a South Carolina state senator who went, basically viral. I mean, I saw it being, retweeted and shared on different platforms from people in other states. But I don't know how widespread it was in terms of, the zeitgeist knowing about it. But nonetheless, we'll say for the sake of argument, this video went viral of a South Carolina state senator who was flipping off the crowd, as reports are, an obscene gesture. He was flicking off a crowd of protesters during a one of those No Kings demonstrations. This one was happening in Somerville on June 14th. He rolled up in this six-wheeled 289,000 truck. It's called the Apocalypse truck, which I knew nothing about this thing. It looks ridiculous. It's all black. It looks like it's like, military adjacent. It's ugly. It's disgusting, but that's neither here nor there. But he was passing by some demonstrators who were on sidewalks. He was honking a horn very loudly. And then, flip them off. There's talk that people recognized him. And so maybe the protesters started by yelling obscene things or, whatever obscene gestures they may have done, regardless of who started it. The senator, Tom Fernandez, admits that, yeah, that's me on the video. That's me flicking off protesters, saying things to them, honking my horn and all this other stuff. And he doesn't regret it at all. So again, regardless of who started it, I mean, look, no one looks good as an adult doing these types of things, of course. But a state senator is low on the totem pole as that is in terms of politics. We're not talking the president. We're not talking the Senate and the House of Representatives on the federal level. We're talking at the South Carolina level. So, we're not talking someone up high, but still, you would expect these people have some level of decorum. Tom Fernandez has long shown that he has no level of decorum. This isn't new behavior by him. You can, search, particularly his social media accounts and see the type of person he is. He always acts this kind of way. You would think he would be embarrassed by it. He's not. And you would think his constituents be embarrassed by it, but obviously they saw his previous antics and decided to vote him in. Obviously, there's going to be some people who are disgusted by his behavior. In the grand scheme of things, is this really that big of a deal? No, of course not. But it's still, behavior that's unbecoming of someone who is supposed to be a state senator. I mean, grow up. I get it might be frustrating if people are coming at you. I don't envy any politician in terms of, whether it's social media, people calling their office, emailing them, talking to them in public. I wouldn't like that, people coming at me, making rude comments and things, but you have to try to rise above it. And whether it's Fernandez or Nancy Mace, they continually show that they cannot rise above it. And you would think in a state that is blood red, that they could handle a minority of people, giving them a little bit of a hard time. Now, I'm not saying they should should accept anything that crosses the line from just general kind of being rude. Of course not. That's unacceptable. Any kind of like violence or anything similar to that. But come on, bro. Even if you were driving your truck and you didn't start any of this, you got to let it roll off your back, man. You're supposed to be a state senator. Come on, man. He came out basically saying, how dare people who are yelling things at me, get mad when I, return the favor. Basically, don't dish it out if you can't take it. And I get that. Again, these people are just random, citizens. They're allowed to speak truth to power, or, give, again, within the bounds of reasonable, behavior, are allowed to talk to politicians and call them out on stuff and express their displeasure with them. And again, I get that's frustrating and just to sit there and take it. But come on, man. Be better than this. Be an adult. Ostensibly, you are one. So do better. All right, we got an update on that King Street curfew for anyone under the age of 18. Despite there being some opposition, not just from within the community, but other organizations, and without any discussion, by the way, Charleston City Council approved a new ordinance that would ban minors, again, anyone under the age of 18, from being on King Street and around what is called the Central Business District after 9 p.m. I'll give you more specifics on that in a moment. The curfew technically took effect immediately after the June 17th vote, which, by the way, was unanimous by the city council. But Mayor William Cogswell said that the Charleston Police Department wouldn't begin enforcement until June 27th, which would allow them some time to train officers. Police Chief Cheeto Walker, he actually requested the curfew, and he called it a practical tool to deter what Mayor Cogswell referred to as, quote, mobs of teenagers, end quote, from congregating, in the busiest part of downtown Charleston, especially on the weekends. So this ban would run from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. every single night. So it's not just the weekends in terms of that. But that ban every night is only during the months of June, July, and August. So summer months, of course, the kids are out of school. So at any point during the summer, no one under the age of 18 is allowed in that area from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. The rest of the year, the curfew is in effect Thursday through Sunday nights. Same time frame, no matter what. So if you have any children that are 17 or under, they are not to be out at any point from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. Thursday to Sunday. And then during the summer, same time frame any night. Now, obviously, there are some exceptions. Like if your child is with you, an adult, that's fine. This is if they're on their own or just with other kids. Specifically, the affected area would run along King Street between Carolina and Broad Streets, and then Market Street east of King Street and East Bay Street from Market to Broad Streets. I know that's complicated and probably hearing it might be confusing, but you can visit the link in the show notes and kind of you can figure it out for yourself. There are some exceptions, as I mentioned. Obviously, any use that I hate that word; it's so hard to say. Any kids that are out with adults, obviously are fine. They are also okay if they are working, attending a school, religious, or civic activity, or are protesting. And there are some rules about protesting that you need to know about Charleston, but that's a topic for another day. But those are the exceptions. Again, when it comes to protesting, just because it says they're allowed to protest, there are still other rules involving protests. So don't assume that's a get out of jail free card. And now I just said get out of jail free card. I don't believe there's any plans to jail children over this. It is unclear what exactly the penalty would be for the minor. And again, there's no talk of jailing. That was just, the phrase I was using. So we don't exactly know what, if any, penalty a minor would face for violating the ordinance. However, an adult who allows their child to violate the rule could face up to 30 days in jail, right? Or a fine of up to $500. So any adult who's like, whatever, my kid's just going to be told to go home. You could have a problem on your hands. So be very clear of these new curfews. Again, it's going to start on June 27th. It'll be every single night until September, and then it will shift to just Thursday through Sunday. Link in the show notes has all those details if you need to hear them or read them again. A disappointing update out of Columbia. The city council there voted on Tuesday to take a step toward repealing the city's ban on conversion therapy. The city voted 4-3 on the first reading to strike down the ordinance, which was first passed back in 2021. The vote came up even after residents continued to raise concerns about repealing the ordinance. They did this during the typical public input session. I'm sure they've been emailing, calling, the people on city council, expressing their displeasure with the possibility. And unfortunately, city council ignored that, at least in a 4-3 vote, and are moving forward to the next step. Previously, as you may remember me talking about on this podcast, this move was deferred twice by the council during separate meetings back in May. This is all part of the culture war. We've talked about this before. There's been pressure coming from Attorney General Alan Wilson, who I mentioned before is going to be running for governor. And the ban, basically, if the ban was in place, there's a possibility that there was state funding at risk for Columbia due to a proviso, or what's called a you hear that term a lot, but it basically means like a temporary law in this year's state budget. So in some ways, the city council's hands are tied because they don't want to lose this money, but at the same time, this is something that's been the conversion therapy ban has been widely discredited. Widely. I mean, it's not really even a question that conversion therapy does harm. It does not really do any good for anyone. It causes harm for these children. It does not work. Well, the repeal would have to pass an additional reading before going into effect. So fingers crossed something changes in the city council's mind, at least, one member. And until that vote happens, Columbia remains the only city in South Carolina with a ban on conversion therapy. And it's unclear at this point when the second vote is going to take place. So something to keep your eyes on. I'll certainly keep you updated, but a disappointing development. And if you're unfamiliar, I encourage you to go look up conversion therapy studies and pieces written about it. And you can see for yourself how really no one credible thinks this type of therapy works. And it does more. Not only does it not work, it causes more harm than anything else. In the last update, if you've been paying attention, there is a pretty big trial that was coming up. Michael Colucci of Colucci Jewelers, I forget the official brand name of his business, but pretty prominent, well-known person, especially in like the Somerville kind of area where one of the jewelry stores is. And he has been charged with murder of his wife, and that murder happened all the way back in 2015. It was originally looked at as a suicide. You can get details on, how it started and where it went and other stories. I'm not going to dive back into that. Ultimately, police charged him with murder, thinking he had something to do with it, of course. Now, Judge Roger Young this past week dismissed the case. Everyone was gearing up for, opening arguments, getting started, and then this shocker happened. So the indictment against Colucci is done, and it was, dismissed without prejudice, which means he could end up being, tried for this, or retried, I should say. But it won't be possible without a new indictment being handed down from a grand jury. So the state would have to go through the whole process again. So what the heck happened here? Well, on Tuesday, Judge Young heard arguments from Colucci's defense team. That followed a motion to dismiss that was filed several days ago. And they were filing for dismissal as they were alleging government misconduct, claiming that the South Carolina Attorney General's office had material that detailed that Colucci's wife, Sarah, had planned to die by suicide for the last 10 years. The defense argued that Barbara Moore, who is Sarah Colucci's mother, had told a SLED agent at the time that Sarah had said she would have hung herself if it were not for her family, and that she would never do it because of them. So on the one hand, saying that she had talked about it, but then said she would never do it. The problem is, according to the defense, the prosecution knew about that, and they didn't pass it along to the defense team. When this happens, it's a violation that it's called a Brady violation. And again, it just comes down to really either side. But in this case, if the prosecutors have some evidence that, the defense should have, something that the defense could use, they need to provide that to them. And the judge ruled that even though the mother said after this talk of potentially harming herself, she said that her daughter, her daughter apparently said she would never do it. Despite that, the defense should have known that that's what she said. They should be allowed to bring that up in the court. And because that was not passed on to them, that is ultimately why the judge dismissed this case. Now, former prosecutor Megan Birchhead testified on Tuesday morning saying she was unaware of the story until recently and that she was, quote, floored to find out that Sarah was reportedly potentially suicidal. So again, just a shocking decision. Obviously, we hear about people filing for dismissal. Defense teams do this a lot. And a lot of times it's just, hey, we're gonna throw this out there. We don't really think we're gonna get it, but we have to try. And this one, they seem like clearly they had a case. The Brady violation is a very serious one. And you can debate whether this was intentionally withheld, if it was just an oversight, that, either way, it doesn't matter. And you can also argue, look, is that really going to make or break that case? I mean, you don't know. You don't know how trials are going to go. So regardless of what you think, the judge agreed this was a clear Brady violation. So, I mean, is this case done? I don't think so. I would think the state would be very motivated, as they have been, to move forward again. But it could be a very tough process for them. They're going to have to go back in front of a grand jury who will then have to say, yes, you can move forward with a case. So, wow, a shocker for sure. And I'll be sure to keep you updated if there are any updates moving forward. And that'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Soundsystem for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. I will be back with you next week. I'm already looking forward to it. But until then, good night and good luck.